okay? So let's just unpack how each pressure tends to play out in most of our lives. One of the most jarring realities about life is that it happens. I'm telling you. Like, we learn something about life as it unfolds. And sometimes life happens all at once, right? Work, household management, raising kids, wrangling teenagers, trying to figure out who your adult children are and how they got to be that way, right? Managing career transitions, friend group drama, family dysfunction, financial surprises, open doors, closed doors, invitations and dismissals, health challenges, soul changes, caretaking. The list continues. Life stacks up. And granted, there are times when we thoughtlessly or misguidedly stack these odds against ourselves. Anybody ever been in a crazy season and realized this ain't nothing but my fault? Yeah, we done all been there. I didn't choose well. I didn't look at everything. I just said yes. And it's crazy. Okay, so we know what that feels like. We're not here to beat up on any of those people, because if that be the case, we'd all have black eyes in here, right? So the thing is, we all know what that feels like. But more often than not, life gets crazy. Things stack up on its own. And for those of us, those who are among us who take pride in their advanced ability to protect their peace, to manage their life so that it's neat and orderly and rarely stressful and everything just kind of works out. First off, let me congratulate you. We're not hating. But then I also want to gently and lovingly serve you notice that you won't always be able to control the pace, place, and taste of your life. You won't. We try. Some seasons were good. Some decades were the good decades, right? Those were the years where we seemed to have it all under control. But the reality is that we all experience untimely craziness, demanding seasons marked by overwhelm and exhaustion. What may be manageable and doable for some may be a whirlwind for others, right? So this is not a matter of who's crazy is bigger or faster, but about how you experience the demands of the season. Because what somebody else is able to manage without it becoming a distraction and warring against the health and the focus of their soul, you probably can't do that. Simply because we all have different size plates, right? Some of us got those giant platters that we had this week where you can stack a whole bunch of things and it works out. Some of us have a normal size plate. You can't put as much on that plate. Some of us, the reality is, in this season of life, our plate size are the little dessert plates, right? Like, that's about all that we can manage and handle. And guess what? That's okay. There's no judgment there. And so regardless of whether you feel like you are kicking butt or getting your butt kicked, the potential to lose sight of Jesus in all of it is real. Okay? The potential to lose sight of Jesus is real, even if you're winning at life right now, right? Even if things are going to your liking, the potential for you to lose sight of Jesus is real. The other challenge that Jesus cautions us to guard against is the lure of wealth. Everybody say wealth. Okay, now I need to get you guys to lean in and participate on this one, because what comes to most people's mind when they hear this particular line is greed, right? Being driven to get more and keep more, right? If you're honest, how many of you guys thought about that when you heard the lure of wealth? Greedy people who just trying to get as much money, stack it up, right? Yes, greed is exactly what Jesus is talking about here. But it's not the only thing that he's talking about here. Essentially, Jesus is warning against a heart that believes that money, stuff, and status is the answer. That's what's at the heart of this. A heart that believes that money, stuff, and status is the answer. If I can make this amount of money, if I can hold on to this stuff, if I can reach this status, I'll be okay. I'll be all right. Like, when that happens, then I'll be good. And I'm really intentional to phrase it this way because too often we excuse ourselves from being susceptible to the lure of wealth because we might feel like we're broke, right? Sometimes we feel like greed is a rich man's problem. Right? Like, I clearly can't be chasing money and stuff and status. I mean, look at me. I live a simple life, a plain life. I don't have a whole lot to go chasing after. But the reality is this. Sometimes the most money-driven people are those who have very little of it. Have you guys ever seen that or experienced that? Sometimes the people who are most money-driven and focused are the ones who struggle to make it the most. I'm reminded of a friend who once said during a conversation he was kind of reflecting on impoverished experiences from his childhood. Talking about, how he experienced homelessness, how he had to skip meals throughout some days and some weeks at a time. Like, he really went through a really, really hard season during his childhood. And what he said in that conversation was something like, because I grew up hungry, I'll never get full. Because I know what it is to be hungry, I will never be full. In other words, what he was saying is, because I know what it is to go without, I'm never going to be satisfied with what I got. I'm going to always keep grinding. I'm going to always keep hustling. I'm going to always keep reaching to get more because I don't ever want to find myself in that position again. Can anybody relate to that? Because I know what it is to be hungry, I'll never be full. That mindset is quite admirable in today's hustle culture, which ultimately celebrates overworking, constant networking, and blurred lines between work and life. And that's all considered an asset when it comes to capitalism. But make no mistake about it, it is a liability in the kingdom of God. That kind of attitude, that mindset, I'm always going to be on the grind and the hustle. I'm always going to get mine and make sure that I get as much as I can. Okay, that'll work for you for a while, but it has its limits. The world will celebrate you and applaud you, but you get no credit for that in the kingdom of God. Whether it's the struggle of a demanding season or drivenness to secure the bag, you know what Jesus does? He calls it all the same thing. When you look at our text, Jesus says whether it's just trying to handle a crazy season or trying to chase after wealth, it all amounts to nothing but weeds. That's what he says. It's all weeds. And we all know that weeds are always a problem, don't we? Like, how many of us get excited about weeds? Well, before you respond to that, I just want you to kind of think. Because the truth is that we're not always able to spot a weed when it first shows up. And we get excited about weeds way more than we think. Just think about your own lawn. Okay, anybody here take pride in their lawn at home? When the warmth, the early warmth of spring comes around and we walk outside, some of us get real excited to see speckles of green just sprinkled across our winter brown lawns. So excited that we joyfully presume that everything green is grass, right? Anybody ever done that? Anybody ever got excited, right? You look out, it's just been brown and gray and dry for a couple of months. One day you go out and it's just like this little fuzz of green everywhere. And we look at it and we welcome it. We welcome it. Matter of fact, we somewhat blush at the sight of it. We see it and we grin, we get a little bit excited. For all we know, it's looking like we're going to have a good grass year, right? This year, This is going to be the year that I'm going to get lawn of the month. This is the year where everything is going to be real green and thick and lush. But seasoned lawn keepers know that everything green ain't grass. That it's only a matter of time before the weeds reveal themselves. But the challenge is, by the time that you can tell, it's almost too late. Because the thing about weeds is that they spread fast. Very fast. And before long, they've compromised the healthy grass in larger sections of the yard. Jesus warns us in this parable that all growth ain't good growth. Okay? All growth is not good growth. There are some opportunities. There are some phases of momentum. There are certain doors that open. There are all of these things that on the surface, to most people, it's like, man, God is blessing. He may be. But he is calling us into a life of discernment. That we are able to discern the difference between good and great. So that good things do not get in the way of the best thing. I mean, just think about Mary and Martha. Wasn't that their struggle? Right? We all know about Martha. And I want to be careful how I reference her because I think that we beat up on Martha way too much. Particularly for there to be so much Martha in all of us, right? Like Martha was on her stuff, lovingly hosting Jesus. Her level of hospitality was second to none. She was doing all of the right things in order to create the right kind of space and ambience for Jesus to come in. She was doing good things, but at the end of the day, Jesus was like, Martha, Martha, come on, Martha. I mean, your space is beautiful, it's clean, it smells fresh. The food was delicious, the music playing in the background was absolutely delightful. Like, I'm enjoying the whole vibe that you set up for me, but the problem is, like, I didn't come here to enjoy your home. I came to enjoy you. I came to have a conversation with you. I came to hear what's on your heart and your mind. I came to clue you in what's on mine. So, thank you. Really appreciate it. But Mary, the one who on the surface looks lazy, the one who all of the Marthas in town would just look and say, oh, she ain't got it. She ain't strong enough. She don't have the bandwidth. She eating off of one of those dessert plates, right? Well, she chose the better thing. She chose the better thing because when I leave, her soul is going to be full and yours won't be. Right? I mean, this is consistent in Jesus' life and ministry. This is how he tracks. This is what he's always inviting his people into. This is the tension that he's always inviting us to lean into. What is the difference between the good thing and the best thing? When life is crazy and intense for all the best reasons or the worst reasons, are you holding space for Jesus? With all of the opportunities before you, the doors that are opening, all of the networking functions that are happening, all of the different organizations that are inviting you to say, hey, we think that you hot stuff. We want you to be part of what we do. All of this, right? Jesus is like, that's all fine and good. None of that stuff in and of itself is bad. But if it robs you of time in my presence, if it compromises your ability to be seen by me and to know that I know you, if it robs you of soul-filling moments with me, it might be good, but it ain't gold. Jesus warns us that all growth is good growth. that both the lure of wealth, the constant hustle and grind to achieve success, and the worries of life, even when those worries stem from good, responsible reasons, that they both have the potential to become like weeds in our lives. If we're not careful, these pressures can choke out what truly matters. Just as weeds rob healthy plants of nutrients and sunlight, an overextended life can steal away the time and attention that's needed to actively follow Jesus and to experience the reality of his presence. Don't you know that there are people who following after Jesus, but they don't really know him? That there are people who are following after Jesus, but they can tell you very little about what he likes and doesn't like. They can tell you very little about what his voice sounds like to them. They can tell you very little about what is on Jesus' mind concerning the space and the time that they inhabit. They can tell you very little about the invitations that Jesus is personally extending to them. You can follow Jesus and not be following Jesus. So this is the thing that he says. Be very careful about how these weeds, how they take root and they grow up in your life. Some really good things, they could only be crowding me out, pushing me to the edges, to the margins of your life. Without intentionally practicing Jesus' presence, we miss out on the transformative power that it brings to our lives. We miss out on blessings like a sense of peace and security. Right? We hustle so hard because we just want to feel secure. And he's like, if you just slow down long enough and tap into my presence, you'll feel it. It's already there. The security is there. We miss out on things like rest and joy and vibrant fellowship in the spirit and the warmth of Christ-centered community. We miss out on perspective. Walk around like Chicken Little, crying, the sky is falling. And Jesus is like, calm down. It's just rain. And remember, rain is a gift. That's a blessing, right? Remember, that's something that I'm using to nourish and grow you. But if we're not spending time with him, our perspective is all skewed. If we're not spending time with him, you want to know another one of those blessings that we don't get to really lean into? Longevity. Yeah. Staying power. Being able to be on the journey long enough to see what God has been doing all along. Being able to show up in somebody's life and hear how they just cannot tell their story without telling a little bit of yours. Because you've been there. On assignment. With clarity. You've been there on assignment, not wavering because it's gotten hard and because it's gotten confusing, because you've spent enough time in the presence of Jesus to realize, oh, this is just the wind and the waves. This is just a storm. Storms come and go. And they all obey his commands. Longevity. That's something that he wants us to have a sense of. And so much more. Here's the thing. This whole potential for weeds to spring up in our lives, for things that look good to turn out to be very toxic, for our fellowship with Jesus, this risk is real for all of us. All of us. Y'all, quite frankly, I feel like I'm probably more at risk than anybody else in the room. Honestly, when I look at the assignments that the Lord has given me, And all of the good invitations and calls, the text messages, all the things that say, hey, Pastor, can we get together for this? Can we think about how to do this? Can we start all these different things? Y'all, let me tell you, in my heart of hearts, I want to be the biggest yes man around here. Yes, 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 yes. Let's do it. Let's go. Let's kill it. It's whatever. But there's something that the Lord has really been showing me. Is saying, listen, for everything that you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. Right? It's Luton's law of motion. Right? For every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction. We can want to say yes to so many things at every turn that we're saying no to the best things, to the most needed things. Now, there are some times when you want to say no, 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 and God is going, that's a yes. I know you can't see it. Go through this one. I'll expand the capacity. I'll expand the perspective, but this one is actually a yes. And you don't know it until a bit later, right? But you only are able to hear when he's telling you your no should be a yes, when your heart isn't crowded out by all the other things, namely the worries of life and the lure of wealth. This risk is real for all of us, which is why it is so incredibly important to recognize that neither struggle is more worthy or less serious than the other, right? Sometimes we try to grade and categorize where people's struggle is, especially in our culture where we seem to often demonize the greedy workaholic, right? Any of y'all ever just held contempt in your heart for that person who just overworks all the time? That's so easy to look at, right? Like, we demonize the greedy workaholic, criticizing them for missing the games, criticizing them for never really being present, criticizing them for missing out on the true meaning of Christmas and losing sight of Jesus along the way. While at the same time, our cultural tendency is to sympathize with the person who's overwhelmed by the demands of raising children and caring for ailing family members, or just trying to hold it all together during a difficult season. Like, we hold a lot of grace for those folks, right? But I want us to pay attention to something, and it's this. This is a distinction that Jesus does not make. He does not say that the greedy workaholic, the one who's always hustling and on the grind, that they're at greater risk and in a worse position than the one who's just trying to show up for their family and their friends and all of the things, and they're overwhelmed. Jesus does not put them in different categories. As a matter of fact, according to his teaching, both paths of pressure and overextension lead to the very same outcome, a life where Jesus is crowded out. But here is the good part, right? Like, I don't want to talk about the hard stuff without talking about the hope. Because the good part is this. Jesus realizes that all of us are going to struggle somewhere on the spectrum in both of these categories at some point in our life. And knowing that, the whole point of him teaching and speaking about this is to offer mercy and grace and hope to those who are in either situation. So, here is the question. How can we receive what Jesus has to offer this season? How do we make and hold space for him in the midst of life's demands? How do we ensure that Jesus isn't crowded out by the constant hustle and pursuit of security and success? Well, y'all, it's real simple, and it's really close. It's right there in verse 23. Verse 23 says, "The seed that fell on good soil represents those who truly hear and understand God's word and produce a harvest of 30, 60,